today's episode, I'm creating a standalone Ibex rock style enclosure. This is for the Alpine Ibex in-game. So what I'm doing is I'm taking loads of inspiration from the Ibex at Artis Zoo. So I don't know if anyone has visited there, but they do have a really cool enclosure, which I'm taking quite a lot of inspiration for this build. So as always, I'm using inspiration and then adding my own twist. So the overall thing with this is I'm going to take as much inspiration as I can from the Artis enclosure, and then I'm adding my own kind of spin onto it. So in the end results, obviously you've seen the cinematics at the start. It's got a couple of different elements that are the same. So like the bridge, the kind of free hanging bridge at the top. So the one at Artis does have that. And I'm going to do a little tutorial midsection in this video just to kind of go through how I did that. Because it's quite fun to kind of put these elements into enclosures. And as well making it traversable for the animals, because as you know, within this game it is a little bit tricky to get the traversable area to a T. So it's a lot of fiddling around, it's a lot of moving and manoeuvring, but we get there in the end. So the end result I was super happy with, because I wanted to capture as much character as I could, as well as sticking to the theme of the Tropical Castle Zoo. And you might also be thinking, why did I choose the Alpine Ibex for the entrance of the zoo? So my idea for this is because they are quite an active animal, I wanted to have something at the start where it was like a feature enclosure, whereas as you can see the rock itself, like the Ibex rock itself, is quite a standout enclosure as such. So I wanted that at the very start so it catches the guest's attention as it comes in. So I thought the position where it is, it's quite central. I kind of wanted, when you look at it dead on, you can kind of see the castle through the arch. So that's my overall thinking for that one. So the scenery pieces I've put in already to kind of line out the terrain that I've made and the flooring. So it's the stone wall pieces. I think they are in the base game. I can double check that one and pop it in the description below. But it's pretty much just like a breeze block wall. And I've also used the stone flooring as well, because them two go hand in hand together. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the inspiration. So the unique enclosure that I saw is the only time I've ever seen the Alpine Ibex in a zoo. I think in a couple of weeks when I am back in the Netherlands, I believe Rotterdam Zoo have them, so if they do have them I'm going to take plenty of photos, just kind of see how it compares to the Artis Zoo in Amsterdam. So I'm going to insert a picture here of just what I'm trying to kind of recreate and take inspiration from. Okay, so this is just a little video that I took when I was there. So this is the bridge that I'm going to recreate in game. So I'm not doing it with rocks, I am doing it with the Indonesian temple bricks, because I think it gives a better effect. But this is kind of like the style, so they actively use the bridge at Artis Zoo in Amsterdam, which is pretty cool. I was a little bit scared when one was stood at the top. I was a bit like, oh my god, please do not jump. But they're pretty good. They're like massive mountain goats. I think they're very similar to mountain goats, so they're completely fine up there, which is good. Okay, so because we are in franchise mode, I'm going through the trading center and just getting the best ones that I can personally get. So in franchise mode, you want to try and get the best stats as possible. You'll get more conservation credits when trading or releasing them to the wild. So I picked a handful of females and one male. I know the male's not amazing, but my intention isn't necessarily a breeding program for these. It's more just for show. But obviously if they breed, then we get conservation credits. That's all good, but if they don't, then they don't. So that is pretty much all the ones that I've got. Whether I add some more in the future or not, I'm not 100% sure. I wanted to keep it kind of small because the space is limited. There's not a lot of ground space, it's more height space than anything. So getting the actual traversable area fixed is quite tricky in this one, but we've pulled it out of the bag and made it work, which is good. So keeping in the theme with the Alpine Ibex, I'm using the Tiger rocks. I'm not sure if that's how you say it, I believe it is Tiger. I don't know if it's Taiga, I'm not sure. It's the first time I've ever really used that word in this game. So if I get that wrong, I do apologise to anyone who knows how to pronounce that. But if I have said it wrong, drop down below and I will correct myself next time. So I'm using these rocks. Also what I did here was the little hut in the picture for the one at Artis. I did try to replicate this, but in the end we did take the hut out. So I used it more as an animal shelter more than anything, because I just couldn't get the path to kind of get it as it is now. I wasn't able to get the habitat gate in. So we scrapped that and we completely hid all the guest facilities underground. So there's no gates or anything visible to the public. And I do realise as well that I do refer to myself as we quite a lot. I don't know why I do that, because it is just me building this. There's no one else involved. It is my solo channel, solo builds. I haven't got anyone else doing anything on this one, so I don't know why I keep referring to myself as we, but it is just I, so I'm going to try my best not to say we throughout the rest of this video. Okay, so what I'm doing with the tiger rocks here is I'm just laying out where I want the ibexes to be able to traverse. So it's pretty much just like a road map. It's very rough at the minute. I'm just popping it in where I think they will be able to get to, where they won't be able to get to, and just making sure they've got slopes and stuff to get up and down on. So what you can see is I'm just using shift just to alter the height of the rocks. You can pretty much do this with anything in the game. Just hold down shift. I always work with the rotation tool on because I find it personally easier. Unless I'm doing more of like a detailed thing, then I will turn it off. But for this kind of thing, if I'm getting more shapes, I will just leave it on. I stick it to 15 degrees. That's probably the most that you'll need, because if you start doing it more, it's going to rotate like crazy. You can also use random rotation as well, but I find with slanted rocks like this, it's just not, it doesn't really work. So I just keep the angle snap on. And another key element that I am taking into consideration when building this is the traversable area, because we are playing in franchise mode. And if you do play franchise mode, you know the game is quite strict about the animal welfare. So we've got to utilize our height space rather than our floor space on this one. So I'm building up higher to compensate for the shorter space we have on the floor. There's probably some equation there, but I'm not going to go into it. But it works for the franchise mode because these animals don't require massive amounts of space. But what I'm doing is I'm making enough up the enclosure, so as I'm building up, I'm making sure there's walkways and plenty of like resting spots. So that's all counting towards our overall habitat quota for the ibex. So if you ever kind of stuck for space on the ground, try and build up, use your terrain and use rocks and stuff to kind of increase their overall terrain, because it's gonna help at the end of the day if you are struggling for space. Try and go upwards. If you can do climbing as well, try and put some platforms down. That will also count towards it as well. Okay, so this part of the video I have slowed it down because it's more of a tutorial. So it's just how I created the archway bridge similar to the enclosure at Artis Zoo in Amsterdam. So what I'm doing is I'm using the Indonesian temple bricks. So these are the singular bricks, sorry. So it's the one selected there. So what I'm doing is just turning off the random rotation because I had that on here. So I'm placing one down, and then as kind of like a bricklayer would, I'm doing one, and then I'm doing one a little bit higher, and then I'm going above. So just going to quickly show you that technique here. So what I'm doing is I'm just duplicating that one, so Control and X, duplicating that one over, and I'm just dragging it back just to create that traditional kind of bricklaying style. Obviously I'm not a bricklayer, so I don't know if that is a traditional one or not, but you get the gist with that one. So it looks like how a brick wall would look. So just swapping them around just to give it a bit of like variation. So as you would kind of see on a brick wall, you get that kind of uneven pattern, but they're all in the same line. So what I'm going to do is I'm just sticking with that kind of ratio, because it makes it a lot easier when I do come to rotate it and do the actual bend. So what I've done here, that's the start of the bridge. So I've used the smaller pieces. I believe these are the 1 meter pieces. So that's the start of it. So I'm just going to select all of those. So as you can see, I've left them kind of slots. So they're going to kind of slot together a bit like a Lego brick. So I'm just Control X in all of those. And then using the angle snap off, I'm just going to rotate that to a point where I am happy. And then as you can see, they snap nicely into place. So it's as simple as that. It's pretty much just duplicating that one up and over until we make ourselves a bridge. So that's pretty much how I made that. Like I say, if you stick with that kind of bricklaying, we'll call it the bricklaying ratio. Like I say, I don't know if that's what it's called, but it's just a way to lay bricks. If we stick with that and you just turn your angle snap off and you just keep rotating it until you are happy with the arch of the bridge, you can keep the angle snap on if you want a more defined bridge, but obviously I wanted that more, looks like it's gonna fall down at any point kind of style. So I just turned it off and I just completely freehanded the angles on that one. So I hope that bit was helpful to kind of understand how I did that. Like I say, it's not an overly complicated thing to do. was fairly easy. And then obviously you can add rocks underneath if you wanted as well, but it's entirely up to you how you do that. And as well, to make life easier for yourself as well, if you just hold down on control and select all of the ones that you've laid when you get to the halfway point, you can make life a lot easier for yourself. Instead of keep duplicating all these, literally just select them all and control and X those, rotate them around and just pop them into position, and you've got yourself the perfect bridge. It's just not so much the lazy way. Well, it is technically the lazy way, but it's just making your life easier. If you want to sit there and go through and do it, you can do. But, you know, if there's an option to make it easier for you, why not use it? So the reason I placed the arch at the very top, so as you can see, it lines up very nicely with that path there. So my idea is, as a kind of visual person, I like to kind of visualize what it would be like seeing it in real life. So the entrance path, if you follow it directly down, it leads you directly to the castle. So on the top of the hill you've got the castle, and I wanted the arch to just like kind of showcase that from the entrance. So you'd kind of walk in and you'd see like ibexes walking above the top of the arch there, and you can see the castle in the distance. I thought that'd be really cool, so that's kind of why I've done that as I have done it. So I think the location for it is quite good. Obviously there's going to be some amendments, because obviously the path there at the moment, that's not staying, it's got to go because we couldn't make that work. So I'm just going to pop that back into Speedbuild. What I'll do is I'll just put some music over for this bit, so the lovely in-game music as you all know and love. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to finish it up and just add some finishing touches to the rocks, and then I'll come back and then I'll do more of a tutorial on how I did the underground staff facilities and the hidden keeper gate. Okay, so what I did to create the underground staff gate, so this is just an entrance for the keepers to get into. So what I've done is I've just blocked out a little bit there, as you can see. So what I've done as well is I've used the terrain tool. So if you use the stamp tool, I use the square one. what you can do is you can actually flip those terrain tools. So if you put them on their side, you can expand them so it creates more of like a tunnel rather than a hole. So I will just do it again quickly for you just to kind of show you what I did and how to rotate those, because as you can see here, the terrain itself isn't even enough to actually support that habitat gate. So it just requires a little bit of tweaking. It does take a little bit of patience, so if you are impatient, you will just kind of have to persevere and just kind of grin and bear this bit, because I personally found it a little bit challenging. Getting the path underneath that tunnel was an absolute nightmare. As you can see, it's completely dropped below the flooring that I've put down, but obviously the flooring's not a placeholder for terrain. So this is what I did with the terrain. So I used the square one, and what I did was I pressed X on the keyboard just to use like an advanced, and you can flip it any angle you want. So if you wanted to make a guest tunnel underneath like a road or something in game, you can do that. I think people who have previously made like London Zoo and stuff to do the underpass, I think that would be what they've used, and then they've just used terrain over the top. So as you can see now, I've finally got a path into the tunnel. So it took a lot of patience and probably a lot of stuff that isn't valid for YouTube, which I won't repeat. So we finally got there. So it's just a case now of hiding that. You can either use kind of like a door piece to hide that, or you can just cover it up completely with walls. It's entirely up to you. Obviously, at first I opted for this option, but then I go back and I do change it to a wall because I didn't like the look of this. I thought it didn't blend in, and it just looks a bit vanilla. I know I've not got any mods or anything in this, but it's very vanilla, that kind of entrance. So that is pretty much how I did it. Later on, I do change it so there isn't a path at all. I completely delete it. I didn't do it in this episode, it is in a couple of episodes' time, but I can clip that out and I can pop it in as like a special bit in another episode, just as like a progress thing. But I completely deleted that path and just had all the staff facilities and all the staff underground ready. So as you can see, I'm just hiding all the gates and stuff. So that is pretty much what I've done to hide that. And then you can either fill where the entrance is to the path with bushes, or you can put like a building, make it look like a shop just to hide it in and just give the illusion that it's pretty much a standalone enclosure. Okay, so just going around the floor of the enclosure, so the ibexes can also use this as well. So I'm just trying to free up as much space as possible. So deleting that staff building out as well because it can't be used. So this will also free up a little bit of space. They can use that as hard shelter. And then I've taken quite a lot of rocks from the bottom of the enclosure, so they can also use that to walk around. So just going to add some final touches to this shelter. Like I say, it's a very kind of standard Alpine style enclosure. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop some bedding in there so they can actually use that. So with these, they've got quite a little bit of shelter in this one anyway, because they've got a whole kind of layer as such where they can go and hide from the rain and the other elements. So pretty much the shape I've got now is the final configuration. It takes a lot of tweaking once I get the ibex into their enclosure, but as you know with this game, the traversable area is very hit and miss. Sometimes it can be amazing, sometimes it can be a little bit of a challenge to get that sorted. I know with this enclosure, I was on the struggle bus trying to get this sorted, but I managed to pull it out in the end. It just takes, like I say, a lot of patience and a hell of a lot of tweaking. So it's all about just adding those extra bits and just making sure the animal hitbox can actually stand on what you've put down. Okay, so prior to building this zoo and recording this, I do have like a guinea pig franchise zoo, if that makes sense. So I use my guinea pig zoo as a trial for the boundaries and stuff that I can push in franchise mode. So that zoo is pretty much just, it sounds cruel, but I don't really worry too much about the animal welfare with that one, because it's more of a test for me just to see how much I can actually push the boundaries to the point where the animals are happy. So I did previously kind of create something similar to this just to kind of test out the waters, just to see if this rock kind of style thing will work. Okay, so just looking here, so a couple of our ibexes are ready. The rest of them are under quarantine, so that should come through fairly quickly. It shouldn't take them too long because I have got all the facilities close to each other. So as you can see, they're dropping down quite quick. So as soon as they're all ready, I will pop them all into the enclosure, and then pretty much from there what it is pretty much just an amending game. It's checking the heat map, checking if they can traverse, if not, pulling rocks out, pushing rocks in, deleting rocks, adding rocks, until they can make it all the way to the top. Okay, so while I'm waiting for the ibexes to arrive from the quarantine, so I've just had a quick look and I can't see that any zoos in the UK actually have the Alpine Ibex. Like I say, I've only seen them advertised at zoos abroad for some reason. I know Dudley Zoo has, I think it's Barbary sheep. I'm pretty sure they're called Barbary sheep. I'm not 100% sure, but they were under quarantine when I went, but they were still in their enclosure. They were just, I don't know if they'd had like some kind of medication and you weren't allowed to go too close, but they just had signs up saying animal under quarantine. And I think it said something like don't get too close to the barrier or something like that. But they looked kind of similar. They weren't like exactly the same. They had the same kind of style enclosure, so I don't know if, like at one point they did have the Alpine Ibex in there. It would make sense because there was quite a lot of rocks and quite a lot of kind of rockery and that kind of style that you would see in the Ibex enclosures. So yeah, not 100% sure. I did see as well that London Zoo had them in the 80s, so yeah, not sure why any of the UK zoos don't have them. There's probably not a need in the UK to have them. I don't think they're particularly endangered at the moment, so I think majority of the zoos in the UK do prioritise like endangered animals. So the ibexes have just arrived in the enclosures. They will be arriving in ones, I believe. So we've got 2 in there so far. So just going to check the traversable area. So as you can see there, I need to do some modifying of the rocks. So what I'll do is I will just take out rocks and just kind of widen the path until they're able to traverse the whole part of this enclosure. So let's just check that one again. So we've just come out of the group as well because we can't actually select the animal. So as you can see, I've made it a little bit further up the hill. So again, it's very much just like a fiddling around game. It's quite long-winded, this bit is. It's a lot of patience, which surprisingly I had for this, but I made it work in the end. It's literally going up and expanding the rocks out just so their hitbox can make it round. So I want them to get all the way to the top so they can utilise the bridge that I've made. So as you can see again, I've moved that rock slightly and that's opened up a traversable area there. So it is just doing that all the way around, pulling the rocks out. It might not look amazing at the moment, but like I say, it's all editable. You know, I've placed them in so I can move them how I want them and manipulate it. So just going to go around and do that. So whilst I'm doing that, what I will do is I'll just kind of touch, because I know I said in the last video that I was off to Yorkshire Wildlife Park last weekend. So we actually went for the Mother's Day pre-entry and it was pretty good, to be fair. It was absolutely rammed, so I didn't stick around for too long because I'm not very good with massive crowds. It was the busiest I've ever seen it, and I've been in like peak summer and it was just crazy. So yeah, I think we spent about 3-4 hours there. Like I say, it's quite a big park. It takes a little bit of time to get around, but we managed to make it round and see pretty much everything. I think the only animal that we didn't see was the binturongs, but I think if you see the binturongs there, you're extremely lucky. I've only ever seen it once. I've never seen both of them. We saw the sea lions having like their medical checkup as well, which was pretty cool. I've not actually seen that before, but they had like little whistles and it was kind of making them open their mouth so they can check their teeth and stuff. And they're quite interactive with the keepers as well. They get a treat every time they do one. We saw both of the leopards as well, the mum and the cub. They were both out. They were on the high platform this time, which was quite cool. We didn't see the male leopard because he's separated at the moment, because obviously you can't go in with the baby. So they were in the front enclosure and the male was in the back one. We saw the new baby rhino as well. That was quite busy as well. I think there must have been at least like 500 people waiting for him on the path. It just got a little bit crazy there. So got a couple of photos and then we moved on to go see the lions, but they were in the back pen, so we didn't manage to see them much. I know they are getting 3 more which they've rescued from Ukraine. They're doing like a kind of charity thing at the moment because the lions were stuck in Donetsk, I believe it's called, where the war's ongoing, and I think, I might be wrong, but I believe the zoo they was in was abandoned due to the war. And there was local shelling and stuff, so one of the sanctuaries in Ukraine has moved them on to Poland, and that will be where Yorkshire Wildlife Park do pick the lions up from. So at Yorkshire Wildlife Park, I don't know if anyone has been, but their lion reserve is absolutely massive. They have 3 separate enclosures. The first time I ever went, I think they had 4 lions, I believe. but 2 of them recently have passed away due to old age. They were part of the first lion rescue they did. So they were separated. I think there was a male and a female in one and then 2 females in the other. So they've only got the 2 females left at the moment, and they like alternate the enclosures. So they're pretty well done. So they've got a central building, and then there's like an enclosure at the back which path loops around. There's a bridge over one of them, and then the 2 at the front are kind of high, low fence. Well, I say low fencing, but lower than path fencing. It's still like a good 5-meter high fence, but you see straight into the enclosure because the path and the enclosure are the same height, and then it's sloped down to the fencing, similar to what we've done here with the ibexes. It's kind of like that, but on a bigger scale. And there's 2 females in there usually, but they were in the back one. And yeah, both of those enclosures are separated by water, so it's like a natural barrier between 2 when they've got full prides in there. So I presume when the ones arrive from Ukraine, I would imagine they're probably going to go in the big enclosure at the back. So there is like a little run past the other 2 enclosures to get to the back one. So hopefully when they get them, I know they're working as hard as they can to get them soon, so hopefully when they arrive there might be a gold event there which I can attend and go see. But other than that, I don't think they've got any other animals planned. There is one which I can't really say much about because it's part of my work, but it seems quite fun if that does go ahead. It's a little project they've got ongoing at the moment, so I'm not going to spill any beans because I'm not allowed to. But yeah, it should be fun if that comes to fruition. But I'm still absolutely gutted that last year is the first time that I've ever visited Yorkshire Wildlife Park. I really would have liked to have gone in 2019 when they rescued the 4 brown bears, but sadly they have all passed away from health-related issues due to the bad conditions they were in before they rescued them. And I've never actually seen a brown bear at a zoo before. I've seen some bears and Andean bears, but it's not the same. I want to see like a couple more species. Like I really want to see a sloth bear. I'd like to see the Asiatic black bear, grizzly bears, Eurasian brown bears. I think that'd be pretty cool. I know Whipsnade Zoo has the Eurasian brown bear because they've just woken up, all 4 of them, because they've been hibernating over winter. There is an official name for that, but I can't remember what it's called. So Whipsnade Zoo is definitely something that I want to go to at some point this year. I've had a quick look at that one and it looks pretty cool. From what I gather, it's more of like a drive around and then you pull up and kind of get out and look at the animals. It's not a safari as such, but I think I mentioned in a couple of previous episodes that they've got hippos, and I've still not seen a hippo. I've still never seen pygmy hippos either, but I will do in 2 weeks because Rotterdam do have them, so I'm quite excited to see those. Hopefully they're out and about. I know they're quite elusive, I know they are solitary, so I don't know if they've got a couple or if they've just got the 1 or 2. Either way, I'll just be happy to see one. I know London Zoo's got them, and I think Colchester Zoo as well has them. I'm honestly surprised Chester Zoo doesn't have them, because I know Colchester and Chester Zoo are linked, I believe, somehow, because I get access to Twycross through work, and with our work annual pass as such, we've got 8 of them. We used to be able to visit those zoos for free once, but then since it's renewed, they've actually taken it off the business perk, so it's not. Can't do that anymore, we have to pay to go to them ones. So I think it's either like a parent company that owns them all, or whether it's not the same charity that owns them. I'm not 100% sure, but I think they're all linked in some form of way, or whether they're just kind of like sister partnership things. I'm not sure what it is, might have to do a bit more research into that one. So just touching on again how I said there's a couple of projects in UK zoos ongoing at the minute. So there's quite a big renovation project just been approved for Bristol Zoo, the Bristol Zoo project. So that looks quite big. They've got quite a lot planned. Obviously this is all visible to the public, so it's planning applications, so you can see those. Obviously the finer details are confidential. Twycross Zoo have just announced when I went the other week that they're building a massive conservation centre. So on the back end of the park they've kind of closed quite a big section off, and they're building like a massive gorilla, bonobo and orangutan facility. It's just to match it up with the chimpanzee Eden that they've got, because they've got an absolutely massive chimpanzee place now, and I think it's following on the same style, so the gorillas will have a lot more space. Because I think, not to kind of bash Twycross Zoo, because I do enjoy going, it's a little bit behind the times with space and stuff. So quite a few of the animals could do with a little bit more space. Obviously they're not unhappy there, they do seem pretty happy, but they're probably just used to it. But I am glad that the zoo is giving them a lot more space now. So you can see the images of the new conservation centre that they're building on Google, because they have announced it officially now. And then obviously the Yorkshire Wildlife Park project, that is still in planning. It's not set in stone yet, it's still early planning stages, so I'm really hoping it goes through because it does look pretty good from the plans. So fingers crossed, and we hope to see it come to fruition soon. So what I'm doing here is I'm just adding all the guest education points. So because we're in franchise mode, education is important. It goes to the overall rating of the park. The guests will be unhappy if they have no education. So it's best just to keep all the guests happy, because happy guests means they spend more money in the park. And in franchise mode, that's what we need. I know at the minute I'm quite comfortable with the money in the park, but obviously we want to secure it as much for the future. So I'm just popping these in, and then what I'm doing as well, I'm using the same floor that I put down in the Ibex enclosure, just to give it more of a kind of modernist look. I think this goes quite well with what we've got built here already. So handy trick, always using Control and X to duplicate everything. You can multi-select, and if you build in a square, you can just do one side and you can just angle, snap and rotate it all around if you want to, similar to what I'm doing here. So again, it's just about making life easier for yourself. It's probably worth getting to know the shortcuts in Planet Zoo, like all the keyboard ones, so I use quite a lot of them. I just find them easy, so like you click on M, it moves, click on D, it duplicates. Control X is advanced move and duplicate, I believe. X is just advanced move. So there is a list in game under the settings that goes through all of these, but they're the top ones that I use most often. Obviously P and O, they control the pause and the speed of the game. So as you can see at the minute, I've got it in pause mode and double speed. So I don't know why I've got it in double speed, because I never play in double speed, but I will change that back. Okay, so that is pretty much it for this build. So it's quite a complex one, but I feel like once you get the hang of the rockery and maneuvering it around and just trying to make obviously the hitboxes work, making sure they've got the traversable area, it's quite simple. Like I say, I could go a lot higher up. My original plan, and it is quite out there, what to do with this one was to have two of these sunken sections and actually use the bridge going over the path, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do that for now, because it gave me enough of a headache doing this, so I'm happy with it as it is. It's more of a standout centerpiece thing. I might try and do that in a future zoo. Like I say, I've got plenty of ideas lined up. I'm currently halfway through the city zoo, so as recording this, obviously the Tropical Castle Zoo is pretty much finished. I've got 2 or 3 more enclosures to do, and then I'm doing the final episode, which is just like a zoo tour, but the city zoo is a lot more compact, so I'm kind of struggling with FPS on that zoo at the moment. I'm getting roughly about 22 because it is absolutely jam-packed, but I'm hoping it all pulls off okay for the series, so hopefully we should be okay, but if not, I will work on a kind of workaround and I will make it work. Okay, so just leaving you with some cinematics of the Ibexes exploring their enclosure, using the traversable area, and as you saw earlier, they were using the bridge, which is good. They do this little hopping around thing, but I think that's all to do with the traversable area. So if you have enjoyed that one, feel free to drop a like below, comment. If you haven't subscribed, there's a little button in the bottom right hand corner now which you can subscribe to, and I would be really happy if you could follow along with this series because we've got quite a few cool ideas lined up. Cheers guys, thank you.